So for this week's module, I focus on the topic of stock risks. So pretty much, so first to identify what a stock is, it's pretty much just a company divided up into little tiny shares of ownership, and people can invest into a stock of the company. So when somebody invests in a stock, they pretty much have a small fraction of ownership into the company. So a lot of people will invest in stock. So over time, just depending on the market, pretty much they can either earn on that investment, or they could potentially lose out on that investment, and then later on down the road they can sell their stock or cash out on their stock or whatever it is. So I decided to focus on stock risks because it's important to see over a period of time the returns on that investment. So to see kind of what you've earned over time, just depending on how the market fluctuates and different things like that have affected your stock. And then to evaluate risk as well when you're looking into investing in a stock. So you want to evaluate, how many risks that there are into investing in that stock. So whether you can predict down the line if you see, a high investment on or a return on that stock, or if you think maybe down the line that investment wouldn't be worth it or you'd end up losing out, that you can look at from there. So stock risks explain. So there's a variety of different types of risks associated when investing in stocks. So common risks and independent risks are they can be they're used a lot when it comes to like insurance policies and things like that. They can also be looked at when evaluating stocks as well. So with a common risk, that means that multiple stocks have been affected, so not just one stock. So multiple shares within that company have been affected, so it wasn't just one person. And then with an independent risk, so that means just one person has been affected or one stock has been affected into that entire company. And then diversification comes along with independent risk. So looking at how the risks that have affected, that single stock, how they pan out over the stock portfolios. So common and independent risks. So some examples of those. So common risks, when you're looking at it in reference to like a stock. So if you remember, that's common risks are when multiple stocks have been affected. So one example that I gave of that would be like war. So when we think of how going to war with another country might affect multiple stocks. So if it affects, like if you have a stock in the oil industry or into a specific company in the oil industry, if we went to war with a company that supplied a majority of our oil, then that would probably greatly affect our stock. And then independent risks. So one thing that would maybe just affect the one company would just be like or a bankruptcy. So if the company went bankrupt, then that would obviously affect just that single stock in the market and not just a variety of the stocks. So there might be just one company in the oil industry or one company in a different industry that went bankrupt, and that would affect the stocks within that industry. So when it comes to diversification and unsystematic risks, so for unsystematic risks, those are going to be fluctuations in stock returns, specifically related to just a specific company or organization. So unsystematic risks, you're going to be looking at things like that may affect that specific market or that specific industry, would be like bad PR. So if a company did something or said something that maybe shed bad light on them, that might affect sales within the company, that would eventually lead to like a drop in their stocks and things like that. So but that could also be related to good PR. So maybe they did something that made the company extremely profitable, so then you would see a greater return on the stocks within that company. Resources, so this could kind of go hand in hand with that war situation. So how I had talked about the war, but also other global issues too. like what's happening with the Amazon rainforest. If something were to happen to deplete some of those natural resources that you do use to produce your products, that's something that would affect stocks, obviously, within that specific company. Maybe not all companies or industries. It's not a market-wide thing. Trends as well that you might want to look at within your company. So trends as far as, like if you're a clothing line and you're producing a specific item that reaches a niche, you might see that depending on how the trends fluctuate, how that would affect your stocks as well. And then diversification for systematic risks. These are going to be market wide, so across pretty much all stocks. So things that we might see affect this are like inflation is a big one. So that's obviously not going to be just, industry. That is going to be across all stocks that you're going to see a difference when it comes to inflation. And then political and government. So, a lot of changes going on right now as far as like policy and things like that, that you can probably see that are going to affect a lot of our stocks. So that's a big one as well. And then for ethics, so one of the things that I put on here is a lot of times when people invest in stocks, when things happen, such as like the recession that happened a couple of years ago, a lot of people lost out on the stocks that they invested in. And that could be, a huge thing for people when they're losing out on all that money that they've invested in. And a lot of times it could be really discouraging and off-putting. So one of the Bible verses that I chose to look at was, wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Proverbs 11:4. So I chose this one because it's a really good reminder that, a lot of times we focus on money and trying to make more money and thinking that that will solve all of our problems. But this verse here reminds us that, at the end of the day, being righteous and faithful in our lives and the way that we go about our daily tasks and the way that we treat each other is eventually what's going to matter at the end of the day, and it's what's going, as it says here, to deliver us from death. So that's what I have. Thanks.